Intro. We all remember the adrenaline, the roar of engines, the shattered glass, the heroes who walked away from explosions without a scratch. Action films have always sold us invincibility, danger choreographed down to the second, pain edited into spectacle. But what happens when the danger spills off screen and refuses to stay there? While audiences were glued to the edge of their seats, something else was unraveling behind the camera, something the studios rarely talk about. Deaths that didn't belong to the script. Accidents no stunt coordinator could explain. Entire sets that seemed marked by misfortune. The term cursed production might sound like a tabloid cliche until you hear what really happened. These weren't just troubled shoots. These were films that seemed to carry their own storm clouds, where tragedy followed the cast home, where coincidence began to look like something darker, where even seasoned crew members whispered that something wasn't right. You might call it bad luck. Others called it karma. But some believed these films were never meant to be finished, that something wanted to stop them. From a real bullet killing a rising star, to entire crews falling ill after filming near radioactive soil, the stories you're about to hear aren't just chilling, they're true. So buckle up. This isn't just about action scenes gone wrong. It's about the invisible forces that haunted 15 of the boldest, bloodiest, most iconic action films ever made. These are the movies that pushed too far and may have paid the price for it. Let's dive into 15 classic action movies that weren't just dangerous on screen, but might have been cursed behind the camera. Count up fact Shabak Wahid. The Crow, 1994. A real bullet, a final scene. It was supposed to be Brandon Lee's breakout role. The son of martial arts legend Bruce Lee, Brandon had spent years trying to step out of his father's shadow. The Crow, a gothic revenge thriller based on a cult comic, was his chance. Dark, stylish, and violent, it was everything 90 seconds action needed. But what happened on the 31st of March 1993 turned that dream into a nightmare. During a late-night shoot in Wilmington, North Carolina, Brandon was filming a scene where his character is shot by street thugs. The gun, a prop, the bullets, supposed to be blank. But something went catastrophically wrong. A real bullet fragment, lodged in the barrel from a previous setup, was fired, hitting Brandon in the abdomen. He collapsed on set and died hours later. The tragedy shook Hollywood. How could this happen in a controlled environment? Investigations pointed to a mix of budget cuts, rushed props, and safety shortcuts. But for many, it felt like déjà vu. Bruce Lee had died under mysterious circumstances 2 decades earlier. Now his son, dead during a film surrounded by death imagery. Some whispered that the Lee family was cursed. Others said The Crow should never have been made, and yet producers finished the film using stand-ins and digital effects. It was released to critical acclaim and eerie reverence. Brandon's final performance became immortal, but it came at the ultimate price, and it wouldn't be the last time death stalked a film set. Count up fact Shabak Ethnen. Twilight Zone, the movie, 1983. The day the helicopter fell. When 4 cameras roll, nothing can be hidden. Not even death. On the 23rd of July 1982, director John Landis was filming a night scene for Twilight Zone, the movie. It was meant to be a fantasy sequence, Vietnam War, flashbacks, explosions, children caught in the chaos. But in the blink of an eye, it turned real. A low-flying helicopter, overloaded with pyrotechnics, flew just 24 feet above the ground. Below, actor Vic Morrow held 2 child actors in his arms, running through the scene. Then came the explosion. Too big, too close. The chopper lost control and crashed directly onto them. All 3 were killed instantly. One of the children was decapitated. The aftermath was unlike anything the industry had seen. Landis and several crew members were charged with manslaughter, the first time filmmakers faced criminal charges over an on-set death. Although they were later acquitted, the trial exposed terrifying truths. Illegal child labor, ignored safety protocols, and a production so focused on spectacle that it forgot reality. The footage was never released, but those who saw it said the screams were real. Even now, decades later, Twilight Zone. The movie carries the weight of that night. It's a cautionary tale of ambition, negligence, and the thin line between movie magic and irreversible tragedy. And yet, some say the real curse came after. Count up. Fact Shabak Thalatha. The Conqueror, 1956. Filmed in Fallout, John Wayne. A legend of American cinema, a symbol of strength, of rugged individualism, of Hollywood's golden age. But in 1956, he took on a role many questioned: Genghis Khan in The Conqueror. The casting was baffling, the film was mocked, but the real horror wasn't on screen. It was in the soil. The movie was shot in Utah's Snow Canyon, downwind from a Nevada nuclear test site. In the early 1950 seconds, the US government had conducted over 100 atomic detonations in the desert. Locals were told the fallout was harmless. The filmmakers believed them. They were wrong. By the early 1980 seconds, over 90 members of the cast and crew, including Wayne, co-star Susan Hayward, and director Dick Powell, had developed cancer. More than half died from it. Statisticians argued the numbers were too high to be coincidence. The desert had poisoned them. Was it negligence, bad science, or something darker? Hollywood didn't want to talk about it. The studio quietly buried the story, just as they buried those who died. John Wayne passed in 1979 from stomach cancer. Others followed. The film was a flop, but its legacy, far more haunting. They came to the desert to make a movie. Instead, they walked into a silent graveyard, and for the next cursed production, fire would replace fallout. Count up fact, #4. The Expendables 22012, when the explosion wasn't fiction. By 2012, the Expendables franchise had established itself as a high-octane reunion of action legends. Stallone, Statham, Schwarzenegger, it was a love letter to the genre's golden years. Bigger stunts, louder blasts, more danger. But during the filming of its sequel, the danger stopped being cinematic. On October 27, a second unit was shooting a boat explosion scene on the Ognjenovo Reservoir in Bulgaria. What was supposed to be a controlled detonation became lethal. The blast went off too early. A stuntman named Kun Lu was killed instantly. Another, seriously injured, was rushed into critical care. The tragedy stunned the cast and crew. These were professionals at the top of their game. And yet, no amount of training could stop what happened. An investigation blamed a combination of miscommunication and rushed scheduling. Some claimed budget pressures led to reduced safety oversight. The scene was eventually completed using digital effects. But the damage was irreversible. Stallone later expressed deep sorrow over the incident. Yet few fans of the franchise even know a man died to make that moment. The film carried on. The marketing machine rolled forward. But for those who were there that day, The Expendables 2 stopped being fun. They came to celebrate action. They left haunted by it. And the next film proved that sometimes the curse isn't a single accident, but a string of deaths. Count up fact, Shabak Khamsa. The Dark Knight, 2008. A role that consumed a life. It was one of the greatest performances in modern cinema. Heath Ledger's Joker wasn't just a villain, he was chaos incarnate. Unpredictable, terrifying, unforgettable. But behind the scenes of The Dark Knight, something darker was unfolding. Ledger immersed himself in the role. He isolated in hotel rooms for weeks. He kept a character diary filled with madness. He slept 2 hours a night. Friends said he was spiraling but committed. And then, 6 months before the film's release, he was found dead from an accidental overdose of sleeping pills and prescription drugs. The world mourned. But in Hollywood, quiet whispers began. Was it the Joker that killed him? Had the role pushed him over the edge? Ledger's family denied it. They claimed he was happy, productive, just exhausted. Still, eerie coincidences lingered. The promotional campaign leaned into the Joker's "why so serious" persona. A technician died in a car accident during post-production. Christian Bale was arrested the night of the London premiere. It felt as if the chaos of the character had bled into reality. Even years later, fans speak of a Joker curse. A myth, perhaps, but one fueled by real loss. Ledger won the Oscar posthumously, but he never saw the masterpiece he helped build. The Dark Knight was unforgettable, and it left behind a wound that never truly healed. But while this tragedy unfolded in shadows, the next began in the bright desert Sunday. Count up fact, Shabaksta. Ben-Hur, 1959. The chariot race that nearly killed its star. Ben-Hur is known for many things: its epic scale, its 11 Oscars, its timeless chariot race sequence. What most don't know is how close that race came to costing a life. Directed by William Wyler, Ben-Hur was one of the most expensive productions of its time. The chariot scene alone took 5 weeks to shoot, with 78 horses, miles of track, and stuntmen risking everything for realism. And in one fateful moment, the realism went too far. During a high-speed take, a stuntman was thrown from his chariot, catapulted into the air. He landed beneath the wheels of another rig, nearly crushed. The cameras rolled on. It wasn't planned, but the footage was so visceral, it was kept in the final cut. Rumors later spread that the man had died. He hadn't, but he was seriously injured. And his near death became one of the most iconic moments in film history. Some say the production was cursed. One assistant director died of a heart attack during shooting. A fire destroyed a large portion of the set. Even lead actor Charlton Heston spoke about the oppressive energy on location. In chasing cinematic immortality, Ben-Hur flirted with real death, and somehow, the reels kept turning. Next, not just danger, but madness, disease, and psychological collapse. Count up Fact Shabak Sebra. Apocalypse Now, 1979. A film that tried to destroy its director. It began as a war film. It became a war. Francis Ford Coppola's Apocalypse Now was meant to be a 16-week shoot in the Philippines. It stretched into 238 grueling days. Typhoons destroyed sets. Martin Sheen had a heart attack mid-shoot. Marlon Brando arrived overweight and unprepared. Dennis Hopper was high the entire time. The crew battled disease, heat stroke, and total emotional collapse. But it wasn't just chaos, it was obsession. Coppola mortgaged his home. He rewrote the script daily. He fought with actors, producers, even himself. "We were in the jungle," he later said. "There were too many of us. We had access to too much money, too much equipment, and little by little, we went insane." People on set whispered about a curse. A production this cursed, this doomed, surely meant something. When Sheen collapsed from a heart attack and begged for death, no one was sure he was acting. When Brando refused to shoot his scenes, Coppola considered scrapping the ending entirely. By the time the film wrapped, several crew members had left the industry. Coppola himself nearly lost everything. And yet, the result was a masterpiece, haunting, surreal, unforgettable. But some say you can feel the madness in every frame because it wasn't acting, it was real. And if that was madness, the next film brought something even darker. Death that followed its actors home. Count up Fact Shabak Thmania. Poltergeist 2, 1986, the sequel that killed its cast. It's rare that a film about ghosts becomes haunted itself. But Poltergeist II may have done just that. The original Poltergeist, 1982, already had whispers of a curse, but it was the sequel that turned those whispers into dread. Days before filming began, actor Julian Beck, who played the terrifying preacher Cain, was diagnosed with stomach cancer. He died before the film was released. Then Will Sampson, the Native American shaman, passed away the next year after complications from surgery. And then came the most devastating blow. Heather O'Rourke, the child actress who starred in both films, died suddenly at age 12 from a misdiagnosed intestinal blockage. She had just finished filming Poltergeist 3. Her face, frozen in fear on screen, became a symbol of the franchise's tragic legacy. Many blamed the use of real human skeletons during filming. Others pointed to the constant string of accidents, illnesses, and eerie coincidences that plagued the cast. Even crew members reported lights flickering, objects moving on their own, and a persistent sense of dread while editing. Whether you believe in curses or not, Poltergeist II left behind a graveyard of its own. But the next film? It didn't just flirt with death, it practically invited it. Count up Fact Shabak Tesai. The Omen, 1976, too many coincidences to ignore. You don't film a movie about the Antichrist without expecting bad vibes. But The Omen didn't just have vibes, it had disasters. The string of eerie coincidences began before filming even started. Gregory Peck's son committed suicide just months before production. A plane carrying Peck was struck by lightning. So was a separate flight carrying the screenwriter on the same day. Then came the real horror. A private jet rented by the crew was reassigned last minute. The replacement flight crashed on takeoff, killing everyone on board. Another crew member was in a car crash. His companion was decapitated, mirroring a scene from the film. An animal trainer working on the zoo scene was mauled to death the day after filming. The hotel where the cast stayed was bombed by the IRA. A restaurant reservation was canceled due to a last-minute evacuation later. The building exploded. At some point, it stopped being coincidence. Director Richard Donner remained skeptical, but even he admitted the accidents were unnerving. The atmosphere on set was tense, superstitious, fearful. Some believed the production had invited evil in by making the film in the first place. The Omen became a massive success, but those who made it never forgot what they went through to get it made. Next comes a film far more modern, and yet no less cursed. Count up Fact Shabak Wah Dusfer. Mad Max, Fury Road, 2015. The desert that broke them all. Mad Max, Fury Road was chaos on wheels. Explosions, dust storms, metal grinding against flesh. It looked apocalyptic, and according to those who made it, that wasn't just the aesthetic. It was the experience. Shot in the Namibian desert, the film was supposed to take 3 months. It ballooned into over 8. Heat waves distorted equipment. Sandstorms destroyed sets. And at the center of it all, a production that had gone off the rails. Tom Hardy and director George Miller clashed daily. Charlize Theron reportedly refused to speak to Hardy off-camera. Crew members described a mood of paranoia and fatigue. "We were all just trying to survive," one technician later said. But then came the accidents. Several stunt performers were injured. One double dislocated her shoulder during a high-speed rig crash. Others suffered concussions. The studio kept pushing because reshoots were too expensive. Even stranger, local tribes warned the filmmakers not to disturb certain locations. After they ignored the advice, wild weather destroyed the set twice. The crew started calling it a cursed film behind closed doors. And yet, Fury Road went on to win 6 Oscars and be hailed as one of the greatest action films of all time. It triumphed but left emotional scars in its wake. For some, the film wasn't a triumph of vision. It was a story of survival, and sometimes, survival isn't enough. The next film, Paid in Blood. Count up fact, Shubak Wahid Wahid. Top Gun 1986. The pilot who never came home. For millions, Top Gun is a symbol of speed, bravado, and airborne swagger. But behind the sunglasses and power ballads lies a tragedy few fans know. Art Scholl was one of the most respected stunt pilots in the world. He'd worked on countless aerial films, bringing authenticity to even the most impossible maneuvers. For Top Gun, he was tasked with capturing the elusive spin-out scene, the death spiral of Maverick's jet. On the 16th of September 1985, Scholl's plane went into a spin off the coast of Southern California. He radioed in his final words, "I've got a problem. I've got a real problem." Then silence. The plane was never recovered. Neither was his body. The crew was shaken, filming paused, but the footage from that flight, it was used in the final cut. What you see on screen is a scene born of real danger and real death. The film went on to define a generation, but it was built, in part, on the sacrifice of a man who gave everything to make it fly. There were no dedications in the credits, no tribute scenes, just a film that soared while one of its pilots never landed. And while this loss came from the skies, the next took place inside a simulated world with real consequences. Count up fact, Shabak Wahidathnan. The Matrix Reloaded, 2003, the stunt that broke a body. The Matrix films revolutionized action cinema, wire fu, bullet time, digital doubles, but some scenes still relied on flesh and bone performers, and one of them paid dearly. During production of The Matrix Reloaded, stuntwoman Debbie Evans, doubling for Carrie-Anne Moss, performed a high-speed motorcycle chase through freeway traffic. It was meticulously rehearsed, controlled, monitored, until it wasn't. In a split-second miscommunication, a camera rig was positioned a few feet off mark. Evans swerved too late. The impact wasn't fatal, but it shattered bones in her legs and pelvis. She was hospitalized for weeks. Some said she'd never walk the same again. She did recover, but the injury rewrote the production schedule. The Wachowskis were forced to cut or adapt scenes. Evans declined interviews for years. What made it worse? The scene didn't make the final cut in its entirety. Fragments remain, but the full chase, the one that nearly killed her, was trimmed for pacing. A sacrifice, made real, then edited away. Hollywood calls it collateral damage. The crew called it a curse. Next comes a film where injury wasn't metaphor, it was myth come to life. Count up fact, Shabak Wahduthalatha. Troy, 2004, the Achilles injury that wrote itself. The irony was too perfect to be fiction. In Wolfgang Petersen's Troy, Brad Pitt played Achilles, the near-invincible warrior fated to fall from a single vulnerable spot, his heel. During filming, Pitt was at the top of his game, sculpted and agile. But as if the role were written in blood, fate struck with eerie precision. While rehearsing a fight sequence, Pitt tore his left Achilles tendon. It wasn't just an injury, it was that injury, the exact mythic wound of his character. Doctors called it a partial rupture. Filming halted for weeks. Rewrites were scrambled. Action scenes were cut. Pitt later joked about the coincidence, but crew members weren't laughing. It wasn't the first injury on set, and wouldn't be the last. Multiple stunt performers were hurt. Equipment malfunctioned in high heat. An extra nearly drowned during the chaotic beach invasion sequence. Some whispered that the production had offended the ancient story it tried to retell. Others simply called it bad luck. But the fact remained. A film about hubris and fate became entangled in its own legend. Achilles fell to a heel. Brad Pitt nearly did too. And the next film's brush with death was even closer and sharper. Count up fact, Shabak Wahida Arba. The Last Samurai, 2003, when the sword didn't stop. Tom Cruise is known for doing his own stunts. but in The Last Samurai, his devotion almost killed him. During one of the film's many sword and horseback sequences, Cruise rode a mechanical horse rig designed for high-speed movement. Opposite him, Japanese actor Hiroyuki Sanada swung a katana in choreographed strikes. The timing had to be perfect milliseconds off, and disaster would follow. It did. One of the safety systems failed. The rig locked. Cruise didn't duck in time. Sanada's sword reel, razor sharp, missed his neck by inches. Inches! Crew members screamed. Sanada froze mid-swing. If he hadn't held back at the last second, Cruise's throat would have been slashed open on camera. Sanada later said, "I saw his life flash before me." Cruise, unfazed, insisted on reshooting the scene. But that wasn't the only close call. Several extras were injured in chaotic battle scenes. A lightning strike hit the set's perimeter during a rain shoot. Horses panicked. One broke free, trampling equipment. Despite the reverence with which the film treated its subject matter, it felt as though the set rejected its presence like a war story that didn't want to be told. The line between authenticity and arrogance had nearly turned lethal, and now we go back to the oldest curse in action cinema. Count up fact Shabakwa Duhamsa. The General, 1926. The silent film that spoke through disaster, long before CGI, long before safety standards. There was Buster Keaton. In The General, Keaton orchestrated one of the most dangerous stunts in film history, a real locomotive crashing through a burning bridge, collapsing into a river below. No miniatures, no models, just a full-size train. One chance, no safety net. What few realize is how close that shoot came to total catastrophe. The bridge collapse nearly failed. The explosion detonated prematurely. One of the supporting beams missed Keaton by feet. The smoke was toxic. The fall, if misjudged, would have killed him instantly. And no one was wearing protective gear. The train stayed where it landed for decades, rusting in the riverbed like a monument to madness. Locals called it cursed. 2 crew members reportedly died in unrelated accidents within months of wrap. Keaton himself suffered chronic pain for years after, but he never complained. "It had to look real," he said. Today, The General is hailed as a masterpiece, but it came from a time when the price of cinema was flesh, not pixels. It was the original cursed production, silent but deadly. This one didn't make the list, but might be the strangest of all. Roar 1981, the most dangerous film ever made. It wasn't a curse. It was a catastrophe by design. Roar 1981 was the passion project of Noel Marshall and Tippi Hedren, a film meant to showcase the beauty of lions, tigers, and leopards living in harmony with humans, but harmony never came. Instead, Roar became infamous as the most dangerous film ever made. Filmed over 11 years, it used real, untrained big cats, over 100 of them. No CGI, no stunt doubles, just actors in a house with apex predators. What followed was pure chaos. Cinematographer Jan de Bont had his scalp torn off. Actress Melanie Griffith needed facial reconstructive surgery after a lion mauled her. Noel Marshall was bitten so many times he developed gangrene. Tippi Hedren broke her leg when an elephant picked her up and threw her. Over 70 documented injuries occurred during production. And yet, no one shut it down. The film was completed through sheer madness and denial. Its message, human-animal coexistence, was drowned in real blood. Critics didn't know whether to laugh or recoil. Audiences avoided it. Roar flopped, and its legend grew. Was it cursed? Maybe not in the supernatural sense, but it was a production that dared nature to play along, and nature answered with teeth. If The Crow and Twilight Zone were haunted by misfortune, Roar was haunted by hubris. It wasn't just an accident waiting to happen. It was 11 years of accidents caught on film. Fiesta ending. Fiction can be rewritten, real life can't. These films gave us unforgettable moments, but behind every scene was a price paid in silence, blood, or both. Were they truly cursed, or just victims of ambition pushed too far? You decide. Which of these stories stayed with you the longest? Do you believe in coincidence or something more? Tell us. What's the most cursed film production you've ever heard of, and should we cover it next?